The fraud alert came to my phone at 3:14 in the afternoon on a Thursday. I was in the recovery ward on the fourth floor of Memorial Hospital. My surgery had been that morning, a scheduled cardiac procedure, 4 hours under general anesthesia, the kind of thing that leaves you with the specific exhaustion of a body that has been through something significant and is not yet ready to tell you exactly what. I had been awake for perhaps 2 hours. A nurse had brought me water. My blood pressure was stable. The cardiologist had been by once and said everything had gone as expected. Then, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. Unusual transaction detected. Account ending 7742. Transfer of $94,000 to external account. If you did not authorize this transaction, please call immediately. I read it 3 times. I thought about the number, $94,000, the exact amount that had been sitting in my emergency savings account for the better part of a decade. The account I had given my son, Kevin, access to 7 days earlier for emergencies, I had told him, in case something happens during the surgery and decisions need to be made quickly. This was not an emergency. This was not what I had meant by quickly. Then, I pressed the call button for the nurse with my left hand and picked up the phone with my right. I was still in a hospital gown when I called my attorney. My name is Harold. I am 71 years old, and this is the full story of what happened in the 48 hours that followed. I spent 41 years as a structural engineer. I built bridges, not metaphorical ones, actual bridges over actual rivers in 4 states. The kind of work that requires patience, precision, and a deep respect for the consequences of getting things wrong. I applied the same philosophy to my finances. I did not spend money I did not have. I did not make investments I did not understand. I drove the same truck for 11 years. I took my vacations within driving distance. I ate lunch from home every day for the better part of 3 decades. When my wife Carol passed 7 years ago, the account grew quieter. Less reason to spend, more reason to save. The $94,000 had accumulated slowly, the way things accumulate when you are patient and consistent and have no particular urgency to spend. Kevin was my only child. He was 43 years old, and I had been watching him make bad financial decisions since he was in his 20s. Not catastrophic ones, just the steady kind that come from spending slightly more than you earn and borrowing slightly more than you could comfortably repay. I had helped him twice, once when he was 31 and his business failed, once when he was 38 and his marriage ended and the legal costs were more than he had anticipated. Both times, I had given him money and asked for nothing in return. Both times, he had thanked me and moved on, and the subject had not come up again. I want to be fair to him. He was not a bad person. He was a person who had learned, over many years, that when things became difficult, his father would make the difficulties smaller. I had taught him that lesson myself. It was the most expensive thing I ever taught him. My attorney's name is Gerald Park. I have known Gerald for 22 years. He handled my estate planning after Carol died. He is methodical, calm, and completely unimpressed by situations that other people find complicated. When I called him from the recovery ward, I read him the fraud alert and told him what account it referred to and who had access to it. There was a brief silence. "Harold," he said, "I'm going to need you to listen to me carefully and not do anything until we speak again. Can you do that?" I told him I could. "I'm going to contact the bank and begin the process of freezing whatever assets remain. Then I'm coming to the hospital. We have some decisions to make." He arrived 2 hours later. By then, I had been moved to a regular room. I was sitting upright, which is the position you sit in when you have decided that lying down is no longer an option. Gerald sat across from me and opened his briefcase on the visitor's chair. He confirmed what the bank had told him. The $94,000 had been transferred to an account in Kevin's name at a different institution. The transfer had been initiated at 11:47 a.m. while I was still in the operating room. Not after, during. There was a brief silence. I looked at that detail for a long time. During the surgery, while I was unconscious and my chest was open and the outcome was not yet certain. He had not waited to see if I survived. "What do you want to do?" Gerald asked me. I told him. I wanted Kevin removed from my will entirely, that evening if possible. I wanted the remaining estate, my house, my pension, my investments, all of it restructured into a trust that he could not access under any circumstances. And I wanted to know whether what he had done was a crime. Gerald told me it was, and that if I chose to pursue it, the documentation was already more than sufficient. I was discharged from the hospital on Friday afternoon. Gerald had worked through Thursday evening. By the time I came home, my will had been revised, the trust had been drafted, and a certified letter had been prepared, addressed to Kevin, explaining that he had been removed as beneficiary from all estate documents and that any further contact regarding financial matters should be directed to Gerald's office. The letter had not yet been sent. Gerald wanted me to make that decision from home, not from a hospital bed. Kevin arrived at the house on Saturday morning. He had clearly prepared. He had the careful energy of someone who has rehearsed an explanation multiple times and believes the rehearsal has been thorough enough. He started with the debt, an amount I had not known about, larger than anything he had mentioned before. Then he moved to the emergency, a deadline, a creditor, a situation that had required immediate action. Then came the part about how he had intended to tell me, how he had planned to pay it back, how he understood it was not the right way to handle it, but how the circumstances had left him no choice. I let him finish. Every word, every explanation, every piece of the story he had assembled in the days since Thursday. When he was done, I stood up and walked to the hallway door and opened it wider. "Gerald is in the study," I said. Kevin stopped. "What?" "My attorney. He's been here since 9. I'd like you to come through." The expression that crossed his face in that moment, the moment he understood that he had arrived to manage a situation that had already been managed, is not something I could describe precisely. It was not anger. It was not guilt exactly. It was the expression of a man who had planned for one conversation and discovered he was in a completely different one. In the study, Gerald walked him through the documents: the will revision, the trust, the certified letter, the bank's fraud report that had been filed the previous afternoon. Kevin sat very still through all of it. When Gerald finished, Kevin looked at me. "Dad," he said. His voice had lost the rehearsed quality. "I know," I said. "I did not pursue criminal charges. I want to be honest about that decision because it was not an easy one, and I do not want to pretend otherwise. Gerald told me the case was strong, the documentation was clear, the timing, during surgery while I was unconscious, would have been significant to a judge and jury. But Kevin was my son, and I was 71 years old, and I had recently had heart surgery. And some calculations are not about what is legally justified, but about what you have the energy and will to carry. I chose not to carry it. What I chose instead was this. The money was gone, most of it. The bank recovered approximately $31,000 through the fraud process. Kevin had moved quickly, and the rest had already been used to pay the debts he had described. I accepted the loss. What I did not accept was the relationship continuing on the same terms. Kevin and I have spoken 4 times since that Saturday morning, briefly, carefully. The way you speak to someone when the foundation of the thing has changed and you are both aware of it, and neither of you has yet decided what, if anything, can be built on the new ground. I do not know if that will change. I'm not ruling it out, but I am also not waiting for it. What I have done instead is this. I restructured everything Gerald suggested. The trust is in place. My pension, my investments, my house, all of it protected and directed to 2 specific charities and a small scholarship fund I established in Carol's name for engineering students at the State University. 41 years of bridges, 41 years of careful work, 41 years of choosing the harder option because the harder option was the one that lasted. Kevin tried to take that from me in 48 hours. He could not take what it had built in me. He could not take the 41 years. He could not take the knowledge of what careful work looks like when you do it right. And he could not take what I chose to do with what remained. That part was always mine. If Harold's story stayed with you today, drop your city below. I want to see how far this reached. And if you know someone who built carefully for a lifetime and deserved better than what happened, share this with them. Subscribe for a new story every week. The next 2 are on your screen right now.